Welcome back to Genesis chapter 4. We're going to look at verse 6 today, and in the prior few verses, we saw how Cain and Abel made different sacrifices to God, and God looks favorably upon Abel and his sacrifice, but he pays no regard to Cain, and Cain responds in this very negative way, and so now we're going to see what God is going to do with response to Cain. Kai apen, kyrios, hatheos, to Cain. Hinati perilupas egenu. Kai hinati sun epesen ta prosopon su. Well, we start with apen here. This is, as you can imagine, from Lego. We see that all the time. And the speaker here is kyrios hatheos. And we can just pause and make a comment here that if you look this up in your English Bible, you'll only see Lord because the Masoretic just has the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, or however you want to pronounce that. And in fact, Aquila, which is a recension, a later Jewish translator of the Hebrew Bible, who was trying to get closer to the Hebrew text that he had at his day. In his day, he also just has kyrios. He does not have the hatheos that the Old Greek has. And so most likely, for some reason, the translator of Genesis has added that. And we've seen kind of quirky behavior when it comes to the divine names previously in Genesis. Sometimes the Greek translator will chop something out that was presumably in his Hebrew source, and for whatever reason, he just leaves out God or leaves out Lord. Or in this case, vice versa, he adds something. And I'm going to do a whole video on this down the road because there's a whole lot of moving parts when it comes to divine names in the Septuagint. So we'll get to that down the road. But either way, what we have before us is the Lord God said to Cain. He's directly addressing him. And this is very similar to what we saw in the garden, in my opinion, where after Adam and Eve fell, God initiates the conversation by asking a question. He seeks them out. And he's doing something similar with Cain because Cain is on the precipice of a fall into a sinful way of life. And so he starts with this, hinati. And you probably know what the building blocks are. This is the nominative singular neuter of tis, and hina here is very familiar in terms of in order that or so that, something along those lines. But when you put them together, it's a kind of an idiom for basically a big, heavy why. For what reason? Something along those lines. So why perilupas here? So this word perilupas basically means very sorrowful. Why are you aggrieved? And then egenu here is from ginomai. And with that ending, that's not a genitive singular masculine ending. You can tell with the spelling change here from ginomai that this is an aorist. This is the second singular aorist middle indicative. So that's a weird ending for the second singular. But you can go back and look at your paradigms. That's pretty normal, but it does kind of come across as a bit weird. So why have you become grieved or something like that? And then we have a repetition of that hinati. So once again, why? And then we have sunepesen, and this is from sumpipto, and this is a third singular aorist active indicative. And so why has your face fallen? And remember, sumpipto means to fall or to collapse. Notice that the ta prosopon here is the subject, which is why this is a third singular. So why has your face fallen? Why are you so downcast or something like that? And so we'll keep it short today. God has initiated a conversation with Cain, and in the next verse, we'll see where it goes. A lot of interesting stuff in verse 4-7, but you'll have to wait for that in the next video.